Hello and welcome back. Today, we're pulling back the velvet curtain on 15 Hollywood icons, actors who lit up the screen while hiding a truth that could have ended everything. In an era when being openly gay meant risking your entire career, these stars lived in the shadows, signed silence contracts, and endured impossible choices, all to survive. But now, their stories are rising to the surface, raw, brave, and unforgettable. From heartbreaking secrets to shocking revelations, what you are about to see might change how you view Hollywood forever. If you love truth, courage, and stories that shake the system, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell. Let's get into it. In an industry built on illusion, Jonathan Bailey stood out by choosing truth. Before the world knew him as the magnetic Anthony Bridgerton, confident, smoldering, undeniably masculine, Jonathan was quietly navigating a system that demanded silence. From the very start, he was told to conceal who he was. Agents whispered the same old warning: if people find out you're gay, you'll never be cast as the romantic lead. It was a rule written in fear, not fact. And yet, Jonathan never played along. He refused to fake a relationship for headlines or dodge questions with carefully rehearsed answers. His path to success was carved with authenticity, not pretense. When Bridgerton became a global sensation, so did the spotlight on him. But rather than using that moment to hide deeper behind the curtain, Jonathan stepped forward. He came out publicly on his own terms, not with drama, but with grace and strength. The world did not turn away. Instead, it leaned in, offering support, admiration, and something rare in Hollywood: applause for honesty. Jonathan's truth didn't diminish his appeal, it magnified it. Fans saw the same confident man, only now more human, more real. His decision became a quiet revolution, one that challenged outdated beliefs and opened doors for others. Jonathan Bailey proved that leading men can love openly and still lead. He rewrote the script for what it means to be both gay and a heartthrob. And in doing so, he gave countless others permission to believe that they too can be seen, be loved, and be exactly who they are, with no apologies. There was a time when Ricky Martin was everywhere, his voice booming through radios, his hips igniting stages, and his image plastered on walls across the globe. With electrifying hits like Livin' La Vida Loca and She Bangs, he defined pop stardom in the early 2000s, exuding charisma and masculine allure. But while the world danced to his beat, Ricky was waging an internal battle few could imagine. Behind the confident smile and magnetic presence, he was carefully navigating a career built on image, one where being honest about his identity could mean losing everything. He was coached to deflect, trained to charm his way out of direct questions, and taught to hide what mattered most. That silence finally broke in 2010, not with a dramatic press conference or a tabloid expose, but with a deeply personal letter. "I am a fortunate homosexual man," Ricky wrote, delivering those words with the kind of calm conviction that only comes from years of struggle. There was no scandal, no spectacle, just truth. And in that moment, the pop icon became something far greater, a symbol of courage. Ricky didn't just come out, he stepped forward. And the world, for the most part, embraced him. Since then, he has used his platform to fight for equality, to speak out against injustice, and to uplift LGBTQ+ youth across the globe. From performing at Pride events to confronting political oppression, Ricky Martin transformed fame into a force for good. His journey reminds us that authenticity is power, and that the bravest thing a person can do is live out loud. For over a decade, Jim Parsons had audiences in stitches as the brilliant, yet socially baffling Sheldon Cooper on The Big Bang Theory. His comic timing, eccentric delivery, and layered portrayal earned him both critical acclaim and a legion of devoted fans. But beyond the spotlight and awards, there was a man living with quiet strength, choosing authenticity over theatrics. In an industry obsessed with image and attention, Jim never treated his identity like a headline. He lived truthfully, without spectacle, without fanfare. He didn't play the Hollywood game of mystery or illusion. He simply existed, open, kind, and unshaken by the pressure to conform. It was a subtle rebellion against an industry that often demands a mask. And when he eventually confirmed publicly that he was gay, it wasn't the explosive cover story tabloids dream of. It was a line in an article: a fact stated without drama. That moment captured the very essence of Jim's power. He didn't need a grand announcement to be seen. His truth had always been there, quietly shaping his choices and his art. That same quiet strength became volcanic in The Normal Heart, where he played Tommy Boatwright, a character grappling with love, loss, and injustice in the midst of the AIDS epidemic. The role gave Jim space to channel decades of lived experience and suppressed pain into something deeply raw and human. His performance wasn't just acting, it was a release, a reckoning, and a revelation all at once. In a culture that often rewards the loudest voices, Jim Parsons is proof that real change can come from gentle conviction. His life is a reminder that authenticity is not measured by how loudly you proclaim it, but by how consistently you live it. Jim never shouted his truth. He lived it with grace and purpose, and in doing so, he quietly opened doors for countless others. His story is not one of noise or defiance, but of integrity, resilience, and the kind of courage that inspires people to look inward and stand taller. For millions, Wentworth Miller was the quiet storm behind Prison Break, a genius in handcuffs, a rebel with purpose. But off-screen, the man behind Michael Scofield was wrestling with chains no one could see. Behind every calculated glance and every clever escape was someone hiding in plain sight. Hollywood loved his intensity, but it would not have loved his truth. So for years, he said nothing. Not out of shame, but out of fear. Fear that honesty would close doors before he had a chance to walk through them. That changed in 2013. When invited to a film festival in Russia, he made headlines not by showing up, but by saying no. His rejection letter was more than a refusal. It was a declaration. He publicly came out as gay, tying his truth to a stand against Russia's anti-LGBTQ laws. It was raw, fearless, and exactly what the world needed to hear. Gone was the man who stayed silent for safety. In his place stood someone who would rather lose the spotlight than dim his own light again. From that moment forward, Wentworth chose visibility over comfort. He began turning down roles that forced him to play straight, saying it no longer felt authentic. He became a powerful voice for queer actors navigating an industry still built on pretending. His story reminds us that silence might keep you safe, but it will never set you free. And for those still waiting in the shadows, Wentworth's courage is a signal. Your truth has power. Let it speak. There is a quiet kind of courage in choosing to live your truth when the world rewards silence. Matt Bomer, with his classically handsome looks and effortless charm, seemed destined for leading man greatness. But behind his Hollywood smile was a man navigating a painful double life. For years, he kept his love, his family, and his truth tucked away, shielded from an industry that still viewed queerness as a risk. Agents warned him. Studios whispered. But Matt knew there would come a moment when authenticity mattered more than approval. That moment arrived in 2012, not with a dramatic headline, but with a simple act of love. Standing on stage, accepting a humanitarian award, Matt Bomer did not make a grand statement. He simply thanked his partner Simon and their children. It was quiet, it was real, and it sent shockwaves through the industry. It was the kind of truth that could have cost him everything. Instead, it made him more powerful. In a world obsessed with image, Bomer chose intimacy, integrity, and honesty, and the world took notice. What followed was not a fall, but a rise. His performance in The Normal Heart was raw, unforgettable, and deeply personal. It earned him a Golden Globe and proved that audiences were ready for leading men who told the truth. Matt Bomer never needed to compromise who he was to be great. He just needed to be seen. And in doing so, he became more than a star. He became a symbol of what it means to lead with love, to act with honor, and to never apologize for who you are. There is a kind of quiet power in Luke Evans that Hollywood rarely knows what to do with. Towering, magnetic, and undeniably masculine, he fit the leading man mold to perfection. But unlike generations before him, Luke never needed to put on a performance off-screen. In London, he lived openly, unapologetically himself. Yet when he crossed the Atlantic into the Hollywood system, he was forced to navigate an industry still uneasy with queer authenticity. So he chose silence, not as a betrayal, but as a strategy. He never lied. He just waited for the right moment to speak on his own terms. What sets Luke apart is not just his talent but his refusal to fabricate a persona. While others faked relationships and carefully staged appearances, Luke avoided the charade entirely. No tabloid-friendly romances, no red carpet misdirections. His choice to simply exist, neither hiding nor announcing, became an act of quiet rebellion. And in an industry addicted to control and illusion, that kind of honesty was both radical and refreshing. Eventually, his truth could no longer be sidelined. With a career that continued to soar and a fan base that admired him for who he was, not just who he played, Luke Evans proved something powerful. That masculinity does not require deceit. That being gay is not the opposite of being strong. And that sometimes, the most heroic thing you can do is live your truth without apology or performance. For years, Dan Amboyer looked like the perfect Hollywood prince. With a royal jawline and charming presence, he embodied roles like Prince William and the classic heartthrob with ease. On screen, he was every inch the romantic lead. But off-screen, Dan carried a truth he had been told to tuck away, a truth that did not fit the script others had written for him. He was expected to stay silent, to play the part both on and off camera. And for a while, he did. Not because he was ashamed, but because the cost of honesty in Hollywood was still far too high. Then came 2017. No headlines were leaked, no magazine covers were planned. Instead, with quiet grace, Dan came out publicly, on his own terms, with his own words. He also shared that he had married his longtime partner, a personal milestone he refused to keep hidden. It was not a performance. It was a declaration. Dan dismantled the image others had built for him and rebuilt something better, an authentic self. He did not seek attention, only alignment. And in doing so, he flipped the script entirely. While his story may not have echoed through tabloids like others, its impact rippled through the hearts of young performers everywhere. Dan Amboyer's courage spoke softly, but carried weight. He showed that you do not need a megaphone to make a difference, just the will to live your truth. For every rising actor caught between fear and freedom, Dan's quiet bravery is a beacon. He proved that you can be both a leading man and an honest one, and that sometimes the boldest choice is simply being yourself. He first stole hearts as a teenage prodigy on Doogie Howser, MD, but Neil Patrick Harris was only getting started. Decades later, he became a pop culture icon as the irrepressible Barney Stinson on How I Met Your Mother, a role that demanded swagger, seduction, and unapologetic confidence. Audiences around the world bought into every smirk and suit, never guessing that behind the scenes, Neil was living a very different truth. When he came out in 2006, it was not with fanfare or fear, it was with dignity. And instead of doors closing, a new era of visibility opened. In a time when many still whispered warnings about playing gay and being cast straight, Neil shattered the mold. His portrayal of a womanizing bachelor was so seamless, so authentic, that it proved one powerful thing: great acting transcends orientation. He did not rely on deception or public image to sell the role. He relied on talent. As the world learned of his relationship with fellow actor and chef David Burtka, it only deepened the public's respect. Here was a man living truthfully and still holding the screen like few others could. Neil Patrick Harris did more than just challenge Hollywood norms. He rewrote them. He became the proof that charisma knows no bounds, and that love, both on screen and off, looks many different ways. From award show host to Broadway darling, he showed the industry that being openly gay is not a limitation. It is a strength. His journey became a blueprint for a new generation of actors, reminding everyone that when you lead with authenticity, the world follows. For years, Elliot Page lit up the screen with a quiet intensity that drew in audiences worldwide. As Ellen Page, he earned acclaim for standout roles in Juno, Inception, and X-Men, playing characters that felt authentic and unforgettable. But behind those celebrated performances was a person quietly unraveling. A soul caught in the exhausting act of playing someone not just on screen, but in real life. The applause never reached the parts of him that needed healing. Fame could not silence the internal ache of living a life that felt misaligned with the truth he had yet to speak. In 2014, the first tremor of that truth broke the surface. Elliot came out as gay while still living publicly as a woman, a moment that was met with both admiration and awe. It was courageous, groundbreaking, and still not the full picture. The true turning point came in 2020 when Elliot shared with the world that he was transgender. It was not a headline, it was a lifeline. The emotional toll of years spent inhabiting roles that contradicted his identity had become too heavy to bear. His revelation shattered long-held assumptions and opened space for trans voices in an industry that often refused to see them. Elliot's story is more than a personal journey. It is a cultural reckoning. In choosing truth over fear, he became a beacon for those still searching for the words to define themselves. With every public appearance, every interview, and every ounce of authenticity, Elliot continues to push the boundaries of acceptance. He is not just a talented actor. He is a living example of how vulnerability, when embraced, can become a revolutionary force. In a world that once asked him to hide, Elliot now stands fully seen, and millions stand taller because of him. There are actors who transform into legends on stage. And then there is Sir Ian McKellen, who turned his entire life into a mission. In 1988, while the British government pushed a bill to silence LGBTQ+ education, Ian did something most actors in his position would never dare. He came out publicly, live on national radio. It was not a publicity stunt. It was defiance. And it was personal. In a single moment, the world stopped seeing him as just a Shakespearean master or a stage icon. He became something even greater, a voice for the voiceless, a fearless champion willing to risk everything for truth. But he did not stop there. McKellen used his fame not to elevate himself, but to uplift others. He was one of the co-founders of Stonewall United Kingdom, which has grown to become one of the most influential organizations advocating for LGBTQ+ rights across Europe. He lobbied politicians, educated the public, and became a beacon for queer youth across the globe. While others hesitated, he marched. While others whispered, he roared. And in doing so, he redefined what it meant to be both a public figure and an activist. His artistry gave him the platform, but his courage gave it meaning. Today, millions know him as Gandalf or Magneto, two roles that exude strength, mystery, and wisdom. But for those who truly understand his legacy, the most powerful role Ian McKellen ever played was himself. Honest, unapologetic, and unafraid. In an industry built on illusion, he chose to live transparently. And in doing so, he taught us all that truth is not only revolutionary, it is timeless magic. In Euphoria and Fear the Walking Dead, Colman Domingo brought a rare blend of gravity and grace to the screen, commanding attention without ever needing to raise his voice. His characters are layered, soulful, and unforgettable. But beyond the spotlight, Colman's real-life story holds even more weight. He is not just a gifted actor, he is a symbol of resilience. As a black gay man in Hollywood, every step he took was on a tightrope stretched across expectations, prejudice, and silence. Yet he never stumbled, never conformed, and most importantly, never compromised who he was. While others in the industry might choose visibility through loud declarations or performative headlines, Colman carved a different path. Married to designer Raul Domingo, he lives his truth quietly and proudly. There are no tabloid spectacles, no curated controversies, just love, strength, and authenticity. In a world obsessed with image, his unapologetic presence becomes a powerful act of defiance. He proves that representation does not always need a microphone. It sometimes just needs a man who refuses to dim his light. And it is through his art that Colman speaks loudest. Every performance he gives is more than a role. It is a reflection of his journey, his identity, and his quiet revolution. He is not just changing narratives on screen, he is shifting the culture off it. By existing authentically, Colman Domingo challenges every outdated notion of masculinity, race, and love in Hollywood. He reminds us that sometimes the strongest voice in the room is the one that speaks with calm conviction and refuses to be silenced. Hulce captivated audiences around the globe with his electrifying performance as Mozart in Amadeus, a role so vivid, so chaotic, and brilliant, it earned him an Academy Award nomination. But while the world cheered for the artist on stage, the man behind the character was living in the shadows. He kept a piece of himself locked away, not out of shame, but out of survival in an industry that did not always embrace truth. For years, Hulce dodged speculation. Rumors whispered through Hollywood's back corridors, but he stayed silent. He did not owe the world an explanation, so he gave none. Then in 2008, he did something quietly revolutionary. Without fanfare, without headlines, he acknowledged who he was. No speeches, no magazine covers, just a simple truth, finally allowed to breathe. It was a soft step, but one that echoed with strength. Since then, Tom has retreated from the spotlight, but not from impact. He became a powerhouse behind the curtain, producing award-winning Broadway shows and helping tell stories that reflect the full spectrum of humanity. In his quiet way, he has championed diversity, equity, and representation. His journey is not one of loud rebellion, but of steady, transformative courage. Tom Hulce may have walked away from center stage, but his legacy speaks volumes. In 1994, Cruz stepped into history, becoming the first openly gay actor to portray a gay teenager on American primetime television. It was not just a role, it was a revolution. At a time when coming out could cost everything, Wilson took the leap both on screen and off. That decision came with consequences. His own father rejected him, leaving him to face the world alone. But Wilson didn't retreat. He pushed forward with courage few could understand. The journey was never easy, but it was powerful. From critically acclaimed appearances in My So-Called Life to unforgettable roles in 13 Reasons Why and Star Trek Discovery, Wilson transcended the screen. He became a symbol of what was possible when authenticity met opportunity. Through every performance, he brought more than talent. He brought truth, vulnerability, and visibility to audiences that desperately needed it. More than just an actor, Cruz emerged as an advocate, using his platform to fight for LGBTQ+ rights with passion and purpose. He reminded the world that representation is not just about seeing yourself, it is about saving yourself. His story proves that even the quietest revolution can reshape an entire industry. In an era when silence was survival, Rupert Everett chose the opposite. He spoke his truth. Long before society was ready, before allies had platforms, and long before social media could amplify voices, Rupert simply said, "I'm gay." It was the 1980s, a time when that word alone could erase a career. And for him, it nearly did. Film offers evaporated, casting directors closed their doors, Hollywood turned its back. But Rupert didn't blink. He chose integrity over illusion, knowing full well the cost. While others stayed hidden to secure leading roles, Rupert walked a lonelier path. His honesty came at the expense of fame, but not his soul. He challenged an industry that rewarded conformity and punished authenticity. He refused to rewrite himself for anyone. That defiance wasn't just brave, it was revolutionary, and though his ascent may have been steeper, his legacy runs deeper. He became the living proof that truth, while costly, builds something fame never can: respect. Today, Rupert Everett is more than a talented actor with unforgettable roles. He is a pioneer whose courage gave others the strength to stop pretending. His journey reminds us that the road to progress is rarely crowded, often punishing, but always worth walking. Rupert may have walked alone, but he lit the path for generations to follow. Zachary Quinto had already captivated audiences with his roles as the chilling Sylar in Heroes and the cool, calculated Spock in Star Trek. His on-screen presence was magnetic, mysterious, cerebral, and untouchable. But beneath that commanding surface, Zachary was holding something back. In a world where silence was often the safer choice, he had learned to keep his personal life guarded. That all changed in 2011, when a heartbreaking tragedy shook him to his core. A gay teenager took his own life, unable to face the weight of rejection. For Zachary, that moment wasn't just painful, it was a call to action. Instead of letting grief consume him, Zachary chose to speak. His decision to come out publicly was not wrapped in fanfare or self-congratulation. It was raw, honest, and rooted in compassion. He knew that visibility could save lives, and he used his platform to shine a light where others stayed in the shadows. Hollywood watched closely, but instead of retreating, doors opened wider. Directors saw his depth, activists saw his courage. Audiences saw a man unafraid to stand for something bigger than himself. Since then, Zachary Quinto has become far more than just an actor. He's a force of nature. He blends art with advocacy, talent with purpose. His voice continues to echo in conversations about LGBTQ+ visibility, mental health, and the power of truth. In a business built on illusion, Zachary showed that authenticity can be a superpower. His story proves that even in the darkest moments, there's a chance to build something lasting, something that can change not just careers, but lives. These 15 actors didn't just entertain us, they redefined what courage looks like in an industry built on illusion. Their truth shattered stereotypes, changed lives, and opened doors. Which of their stories moved you most? Let us know in the comments, and if you believe truth deserves a spotlight, give this video a like, subscribe, and join us on this journey to uncover more hidden legends of Hollywood. Until next time, keep watching, keep questioning, and never stop believing in authenticity.